Welcome to I Just Don't Know, a podcast where we try to learn something new, challenge my opinions, and hope to make the misinformed informed. I can openly say I've spoken when I did not need to, been unnecessarily controversial, and shared my misinformed opinion, thinking it was not. I am Rod Clulo, and in this podcast I will try to right some wrongs and take on a new topic each episode that I think I knew, but in fact, I just don't know. This episode is about the edge of our galaxy, the final frontier, and probably the most exciting and ambitious space travel venture in recent history. A target more than 3 billion miles away, 33 times the distance between the Sun and Earth. It is the completion of a task that will finish off the exploration of our solar system as we know it so far. It is the great and epic trip to our 9th planet, Pluto. Pluto might have been changed to a dwarf planet in 2006, and my assumption for this episode is that while in general much was not known before 2006, it was simply a small 6 pixel by 6 pixel image picked up by the Hubble telescope. We didn't really see it as much more than the 9th planet. It was discovered in 1930 as the largest object in the Kuiper Belt, the sort of final frontier of our solar system. And it wasn't really that glamorous. And apart from giving its name to a Disney character, Mickey Mouse's favourite dog and man's best friend, Pluto, and from memory, it was not really the most famous, recognisable or sexy planet like Saturn or Uranus. Well, I was definitely wrong. So join me to discover how Pluto is simply the most fascinating and interesting part of our solar system. So I want to start off with a quick summary of what Pluto is in general. So it is known now as a dwarf planet. It was changed from the 9th planet in the solar system to a dwarf planet in 2006. It is in the Kuiper Belt, and that is a ring of objects, of asteroids and smaller sort of moons and objects on the edge of our solar system beyond the orbit of Neptune. And as I mentioned before, Pluto is 33 AU, which is 33 the distance of from the Earth to the Sun. So we measure that as from the Earth to the Sun is 1 AU. It is a long way, 8 billion miles away from Earth, as mentioned. And while it was discovered in 1930 and known as the largest object in the Kuiper Belt, it's definitely not the only large object. It is around just under half the size of our moon, our own moon. So it really is small, and it is pretty much of sort of the one planet we haven't really discovered up it through the other, with all the other tests and space probes, the likes of Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, that we've managed to really sort of start looking at from the 60s, 70s and beyond. Pluto had just sort of been simply too far away. So moving on to how we managed to discover more about Pluto. And this all starts with the mission, the New Horizons mission, if you didn't know about it. And I didn't know anything about this before. I wasn't even aware of this, but it started with apparently an underground of young university students who were obsessed with Pluto and the idea of discovering more about this small planet. And in 2003, they managed to convince NASA to start a mission, the New Horizons mission, to go discover more about Pluto. So the New Horizons was a space probe that was built as a mission, a NASA mission, engineered by students of the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory and the Southwest Research Institute. So that's based out of just outside Baltimore, led by Dr. Alan Stern, and he will come up again. And the probe was launched in 2006, and it was the most powerful rocket. It was launched by the most powerful rocket ever, the Atlas V. And that means, and to try and put that into perspective, it needed to go pretty darn fast to get to Pluto within a reasonable amount of time. And to sort of compare that past probes that have been launched in the 60s and 70s, the Pioneers 6 to 9 and Voyagers that you might have heard in other episodes, it was understood it took about 3 days to reach the moon and to go beyond. This, with the Atlas V, would send the New Horizons probe to the moon within 9 hours. So that is a lot time, very, very quick, about 30,000 miles per hour. Pretty hard to even comprehend. And so the New Horizons space probe was only 1,000 pounds. It had to be very light in order to achieve this speed. It was only the size of a small piano, pretty much. So that is pretty incredible. So it was launched in 2006, and the incredible and most ambitious part of it was that it was going to aim to pass Pluto within 8,000 miles of its surface. And that is 30 times less than the distance between Earth and the moon. That is pretty close, pretty darn close if you can compare the distance and that angle and making sure it's sent on the right trajectory. It was sent via Jupiter, Jupiter, to use its gravitational pull like a slingshot to save about 3 years of the trip. So that so when it got to Jupiter, it sort of slingshotted itself towards Pluto, but they had to get that perfectly accurate using the best, these guys are incredible, getting their maths to a T in order to send this probe, this New Horizons space probe, within 8,000 miles of Pluto for their flyby and to take all the pictures and recordings. So this comes on to, it's been sent off in 2006 and it's flying, and about nothing really happens apart from monitoring it. It's of course a very, very long trip, therefore there's a lot of potential for something to go wrong. They managed to get to 2015, where in around July 14th, 15th, it is expected to do its flyby of Pluto. But they get to July 4th in 2015, and you would not believe it, where they lose contact with the space probe. However, there was a very incredible and smart lady in charge of the whole operation, known as the mum of the venture. And that does actually mean a role, but it was sort of like a corny way of sort of the person in charge of the whole monitoring of the probe over that 9-year stretch. And on July 4th, they managed to find out, when they managed to get contact with the probe again, thank goodness for that, was that they had overworked the computer in preparation of the flyby. They'd caused the main computer on the probe to reset. 6 months of uploading sequences and codes in order to do the right thing had caused it to overload. So that means they had 3 days to redo everything, because on July 7th, the flyby sequence would begin, getting everything ready, everything in the right position for it to go within 8,000 miles of Pluto. And they worked 24/7 for those 3 days. And it's incredible, when I heard this, they managed to get it all done with just 4 hours to spare. After 9 years of watching and monitoring this probe, they had to go down to the wire, down to the second, to get this sorted. And so, thank goodness for that. July 15th, 2015, the Pluto flyby would begin. And at 7:49 in the morning, Eastern time, they celebrated when, at the exact second, they knew that the flyby would occur and Pluto was going to pass, and the New Horizons probe would pass Pluto within 8,000 miles. However, they celebrated, but it was only in the evening would they know if it was successful. But what was really interesting was that the night before, just before the sort of really close flyby, it sent home, on the evening of the 14th, it sent home one image of Pluto to the crowds for them to enjoy it in the morning. And this photo was the first and most HD picture of Pluto. It's gone from a 6 pixel by 6 pixel dot of light, like a twinkle on a Christmas tree, as was described by one of the engineers, to this epic HD photo of this world, this massive planet that has these sort of gorgeous red colours and white ice that the New Horizon probe was hurtling towards and was going to take even more pictures of. And please go look at it. It gives so much character to Pluto, and we're going to go into more detail of what these pictures suggest and what is actually on potentially the surface of this planet. So, it's the evening of the 15th. Everyone has celebrated that the New Horizons probe has potentially passed Pluto within 8,000 miles. They're waiting for the contact for the probe to reach the Earth. In terms of it takes time for the contact to be sent, so they had to wait until the evening to realize whether the probe was successful and for it to send images of what it had taken. Because if the probe was slightly out, looking in the wrong direction, it would have just taken pictures of space, distant space, or something else. It would have missed Pluto. And it took until the late evening, uploading 1 kilobyte per second. And we all know how infuriating it is when something goes down to that. If we think 50 megabytes, you can get that in your Wi-Fi now. 1 kilobyte per second with a 4.5 hour latency. It was taking a long time for this probe to upload information, send information back to Earth. And it was a tense evening, and Dr. Alice Bowman, and there's a video if you want to watch it on YouTube, and she confirms that they have got the contact and they have images of Pluto's surface within 8,000 miles. And these images are truly incredible. These HD photos of nitrogen glaciers, mountain ranges, and of potential ice volcanoes, and more importantly, and most interestingly for me anyway, and I didn't even know this, was of an atmosphere, this blue layered atmosphere around the planet, that somehow this very, very old planet that's potentially 6 billion years old, that has managed to move away to the edge of our solar system, but intact, therefore suggesting its age is young, or is old, but it has managed to be sort of go through a lot, getting to that point by reaching that orbit. And it says so much about, our history of a solar system that I actually quite struggled to fathom, and that perhaps needs to be done another time. But these pictures are pretty incredible. And what I'd also learned about Pluto, and confirmed as well, and I didn't really know much about this, is the strange relationship that Pluto had with its moons. So its biggest moon is a moon called Charon, and that is only about actually around half the size of Pluto itself. And this is actually where it becomes no longer a planet, and this is why it was actually downgraded as a dwarf planet. And not because of the size of Pluto, although this is a factor in this situation, but because Charon is actually quite large in comparison to Pluto, it actually influences the gravitational pull and orbit of Pluto, meaning it sort of wobbles in space. Pluto wobbles in space, being pulled by its moon Charon. And as Charon orbits Pluto, it basically means the center of mass in this relationship is actually just empty space between them. So imagine our moon being so big, it causes the Earth to follow the moon as the moon is going around the Earth, if that makes sense. So therefore, as planets are known, they have to be round. They have to be, I think they have to be round or basically circular, and they have to be fixed in their orbit around the sun. This one, unfortunately, Pluto isn't, and therefore it was downgraded because there are lots of other moons like that you could say are similar in size or larger, like Titan and Ceres in the main in sort of the asteroid belt in the middle of the solar system, and around Jupiter, that you could say is a planet. So that's why it's become a dwarf planet, because its strange relationship with Charon. It's strange relationship, and that's Charon with a CH, not Charon with an SH, like the classic name everyone knows. So, what is incredible about the surface of Pluto and these pictures that come back from the New Horizon space probe is that first of all, it's called the Sputnik Planitia, if I'm pronouncing it right, Planitia, and this is a giant heart shape on Pluto, an ice plain that they've managed to take of sheer water ice that potentially could be more nitrogen mixed with water ice that interestingly moves, or suggests that it moves, meaning that it's a glacier. It has some sort of way of moving. Therefore, that fluidity, if that's correct, that if I understand that correctly, and there's no craters. And when there are craters, it suggests asteroids and comets that when they hit planets once every 50 million years in Earth. Our last asteroid hit was 66 million years ago. So when there are lots of sort of craters, it means that that sort of surface doesn't change, and there is the planet is basically dead. But this heart shape, this giant heart shape, this Sputnik Planitia ice plain had no craters, meaning that either replenishes itself with fresh nitrogen ice, or Pluto's age is, we don't quite actually understand Pluto's age. So, really interesting. And because it moved, it suggests tidal forces or some sort of the plates or the sort of surface of Pluto is moving. Something is going on underneath it. So, could there be sort of ice volcanoes that are causing this? And if there is an ice volcano, that suggests that perhaps there's some sort of energy or heat underneath it. And there is actually theory that, could there be a layer of water underneath the nitrogen ice surface of Pluto? There's also what they found is something called the Tartarus Dorsa, a 500-meter mountain range of penitentes, or penitentes, or neves penitentes, if I pronounce that right. And they are basically snow formations found at high altitudes on Earth, and they're not found on any other planet in the solar system. And I'm like, that was really interesting. They're basically like sort of spikes or teardrops on the surface next to each other, stacked next to like thin blades of hardened snow or ice, in this case sort of nitrogen ice, closely spaced together, all pointing towards the same direction of the sun. So there's a whole mountain range of it, and they saw that in these pictures. And then going on to my sort of the most interesting part of it for me is that there is a small layered, and this was when they got the closest pictures, when they were within 8,000 miles of Pluto, a thin and small atmosphere. And these layers of nitrogen, suggesting that these 20 haze layers of some sort of gas, probably nitrogen, suggests there's something that maybe is replenishing it. And there was also pictures of potential lakes that could suggest there was at one point liquid nitrogen on Pluto. So super sort of fascinating that we thought was just a nothing small rock in the edge of the universe. This Pluto says so much, and in reality it disproves and upends many geophysical theories that planets, when they reach the edge of the solar system, they do not receive much light or energy from the sun or their star in their solar system. These planets just die. They fall into just a rock of nothing. But this trip, this epic venture from the New Horizons space probe, shows that Pluto has so much more to offer, and that it is still alive. And it's pretty epic. What it also did, more recently, in sort of 2019, was that the New Horizons space probe, that it managed to visit a planet that is known as the most distant sort of dwarf planet, known as 486958 Arakoth. It is a trans-Neptunian object located in the Kuiper Belt, so beyond Neptune in the Kuiper Belt, even further than Pluto, and it's become the most primitive object in the solar system visited by a spacecraft. That's just awesome. So, but also, it took pictures, or looked at, the closest other galaxy, and that is Proxima Centauri, and it managed to look at Proxima Centauri with a picture that was discovered in 1915 by Robert Innes. I've sort of heard of that galaxy before, but it took a picture of it, and if you compare that picture of the sky with what we can see, the galaxy moves, and that shows that with that distance, because of where the New Horizons space probe is, with that distance of that slight change in view, if you think about when you change your position, when you look at something, it does change location in comparison to everything around it. We can figure out with maths, very clever maths, we could sort of talk about it now, is the exact distance of our furthest galaxy. And it showed that it's about 4.2465 light years away from the sun. And so it's our most accurate calculation of that. So, overall, the New Horizons space probe mission from NASA starting in 2003 all the way to its successful flyby in 2015, and it has now gone into the Kuiper Belt, into interstellar space, like Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. It revealed so much about Pluto, and there's so much that people are still learning as it slowly uploads more and more information, 1 kilobyte at a time, back to Earth. And for me, please go see the pictures of Pluto. It's so much more than just that planet that got downgraded, and it's not a planet anymore, as people used to say at school later on. Pluto is alive. It's still going. And to be honest, for me, when I learnt that and I saw the pictures and the mountain ranges and the glow of the sort of hazy atmosphere that exists, it made me feel, well, if it's still going, then Earth's going to keep going for a long time. And I think that's pretty cool. So to finish up, hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about the New Horizons space probe mission to Pluto, probably the most epic and long distance, or it is the most epic and long distance flyby ever. And I'm pretty darn impressed from something I never even knew about. I didn't know this was happening when when it was going on, I think pretty darn impressive. So I hope you enjoyed that. Please listen to other episodes. Let me know what you think. Visit me on sort of Spotify or my website or Acast. I really enjoyed doing this one. It's going to wrap up a few more episodes about sort of space and things like that. Move on to other topics soon. But I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks so much.